Hey beer fans, my name's Steve Jagger. This is a BeerNative beer review, and in this super special edition, I'm going to be reviewing Punk IPA. Maybe you've heard of it. It's from a little known craft brewery called Brewdog. Some would argue whether it's still a craft. I did the air quotes on craft because there's a lot of people arguing that Brewdog's a macro, but I think Brewdog still makes a lot of really special beers. And in spite of what you might think, in small batches. I think small batch should be the way we define craft, regardless of the size of the brewery. But nevertheless, why am I reviewing Punk IPA? You might be thinking I'm out of my freaking mind, right? Well, I went to the shop and I looked at Punk IPA recently and I noticed something that was different. And take a look here. I'll show you a close-up of the bottle, or the back of the bottle. Yeah, the beer that started it all. But what's critical is, hey, this one's 5.4%. That's not right. What the? But the Brewdog Punk IPA is 5.6%. So what's going on? Do we have a new generation, a third generation of Punk? We do. We do actually have a third generation of Punk going on. If you remember, and if you were a beer fan back between 2007 and 2010, the original Punk IPA that really is the beer that started it all, if you want to give them credit for that, and I loosely do, they had a very simple recipe. They had Atanium, they had Chinook, they had some Motueka at the end, and they just had extra pale malt. Super simple, light malt, hop forward, basics. And it was good, obviously, because the brewery and the beer took off. In 2010, they had the nerve to change the recipe. And they made it more complex. They added caramel malt. They changed the percentage. The original percentage, 2007, 2010, I think was 6%. And they dropped it back to 5.6. Why? Who knows? I'm not going to get into that. There is some information out there, but that's not what I'm talking about today. And they added slightly different hop profile. They added Simcoe, they added Nelson Sauvin, they added and the hop. If you look at the recipe or the notes for it, it's more complex. Sometimes that's a good thing, because sometimes when you're a new brewery or you're a new brewer, you can't make the beer you really want. It's not a case of scale. It's a case of you just don't have any money. You haven't got the ability to import and sustain the variety of hops that you wish you could. That's just business, right? You can't do it. Same thing goes for malts. When you start to expand, you can actually expand your beer range, and as a result, you can maintain in your inventory different malts, different hops, and the same thing goes for any kind of business, right? So maybe they changed it because they thought this is the beer we really wanted. I'm not going to get into that, but the point is, from 2010 until right now, we've had that Punk IPA. You might argue that Brewdog's scaling has made the beer taste slightly different because they changed breweries, all sorts of, that means changing water, that means brewing at scale, means sourcing the same components from different places can change the flavor profile, but regardless, the recipe has stayed the same. Until now. This is a 5.4% Punk IPA, which means it's different. If I go take a look at the website right now for Brewdog, it still is the other recipe. It's still 220. It still says 5.6. It still says it's extra pale caramel, original gravity, 1053, and the Atanium, Amarillo, Cascade, Chinook, Nelson Sauvin, and Simcoe are still the prominent hops. So what the heck is going on with this thing? The 5.4. This is not the same beer. Well, I was wondering this, and it just so happened that at the exact same time I was wondering it, if you watched my double Punk versus Punk IPA, then you'll know that I've got a mate who works for Sainsbury's and delivers my groceries, and he's awesome, right? He pointed this out to me. He sent me a text message going, hey, in case you're wondering about the new Punk IPA at 5.4%, he contacted Brewdog, and he said, what's the deal? Couldn't help but notice that it's not the same Punk IPA. And let me tell you what they wrote back. It was, who wrote back? Lena. If you happen to know a Lena at Brewdog who answers support questions from beer goers, Lena wrote back and said, let me do this word for word. I don't want to be specific about it, or I don't want to paraphrase and ruin some of the context. She said, hey, I'm afraid I don't know the specific date when we changed it, but this only changed very recently. We increased the dry hop rate. This makes the beer significantly more expensive to brew, but we are all about making the best beer we can regardless of cost. Secondly, we have been changing how we filter and clarify our hoppier beers, and the evolved Punk IPA benefits from this new process, which leaves even more flavor in the beer. We'll find out in a moment. This process was put in place for Punk and is now in place for all of our hoppy beers, which is a lot of their beers. And finally, we have tweaked the ABV ever so slightly from 5.6 to 5.4. One of the challenges with Punk is that the esters produced by the yeast can cover too much of the hops. Fair. By changing the fermentation profile and tweaking the ABV slightly, we can better control the ester profile, which means that the hops shine through more. Punk IPA is currently 5.6 in the pack and 5.4 on draft, but we will be converting the in-store version to 5.4. Well, check it out. It's already converted as this support email came in. What's going to happen as well is the draft will switch to 5.2. Whoa, didn't know that, did you? I would finally like to add that the changes overall are very subtle, and they're not a complete rework of the beer that we had in 2010. At least they admit it was a complete rework, right? We all knew it. In taste tests, the new Punk was the winner, blah, blah, blah. Hope you understand. Your pal, Lena. So, Lena, there it is, right from the horse's mouth at Brewdog. But I don't know the recipe. I don't know what they changed. It apparently is a slight profile change. Maybe just gravity. Some information was there, but it's different. So let's pop this and see what we think, if we can find our opener. There it is. Boom. Okay. So I not the Brewdog needs more business, but technically this is a new beer now. That's a big deal. I'm going all in. I've got my little Brewdog glass, which I have no idea where I got. I think it was one of the really, really early, super early advent calendars they did about 8 years ago, when they were really elaborate and not as boring as the current one is. Okay, it's looking very much like the extra pale caramel. It looks the same. I'll give them a little bit credit that it smells more tropical than it did before, more citrus. Because I'd pretty much gone off Punk IPA. Like, I don't have to drink Punk IPA. I'm doing beer reviews. I mean, I swear, I have between the fridge behind me and the one outside and the boxes that are surrounding the one outside. My wife commented that I have probably 70 different beers, like with no duplicates. It's like a nightmare. I have like 100 years of reviews. I'm pre-bought, which is dangerous. All right, I'm gonna try it. Here we go. What do you want to take this in? Because I know that it's gonna be subtle. Right. So the pininess, the bitter of the 2010 to 2020 Brewdog is really, really eased off. It's weird. It's like it's back to the extra pale, like the caramel's gone. One more. And although subtle, I feel like the alcohol level is noticeable. The 5.6 to the 5.4. It almost tastes like a session, like a session IPA that kind of tantalizes you with hop forward without offending. Maybe that's what I'm thinking here. It comes across, so Punk IPA was a very hop forward beer when it started. It was floral, it was bitter, it was exciting. It was one of a kind in 2007 in Britain. And then it got a bit more mainstream. It lost some of that hop forward. It became more bitter and more resinous, but it was, again, inoffensive. And now I feel like this is a step towards a even more inoffensive version of Punk IPA. Almost that, in spite of what we heard from Brewdog Direct, that this is actually a slight rework to make it the staple IPA of pubs globally. That's pretty cynical, but I think that's what it is. Because the hops are there, it is more hop forward, which makes it more gentle on the palate. The resinousness of like the strong Chinook style of pininess is back. The hops are forward, but not like a late dry hop, like a double dry hop. It's really light and gentle. It's more on the nose than it is on the palate, really, definitely. And it's like a session. It's a slightly boozier session. It's like a 5.4 that drinks like a 4.6. Yeah, I think that's it. I think if I were going to drink this, I would actually, there are a lot of session beers that taste more hop forward, more floral. They do this, but they turn the dial up a bit more. So yeah, okay, so there it is. It is less resinous, more hop forward. It is kind of what they said, but my conclusion is that they're trying to be the Budweiser of IPAs. That's a little bit offensive, but I don't mind that, because if I went somewhere and they said, hey, we've got Budweiser, Kronenberg, I don't know, Stella, and this Punk IPA, I'd be like, thank goodness, right? This is great. This is a nice, easy sipper. It has no personality. It has no real significant character in the craft beer world anymore. This to me is like the Budweiser of IPAs, and I think that's what they're doing. They're trying to send it global. All right, so let's. I don't think I'm really going to rate it, because I'll just give it an Untapped rating of like a 3, probably 3 out of 5. It's good. I would never choose it. I'll probably never buy it again, because I know without any effort, when lockdown ends and I go to a pub that I don't want to be at, because my friends are meeting there, that this will probably be there, because it's the super inoffensive IPA choice. Okay, there we go. The new 5.4 Punk IPA Recipe 2020. You saw it first, maybe you saw it first here at BeerNative. My name's Steve Jaguar. If you like this kind of like early insights and you just love the way I break down beers, please subscribe, ring the bell, give me a thumbs up, tell your friends. Yeah, definitely tell your friends. Stick it on your Facebook group and say, hey, this guy's like, he's fun, he's entertaining. We should invite him over for dinner sometime. He might bring beer. Thanks for watching. Keep drinking good beer.